Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Red Letter, Yellow Letter podcast, a weekly anarchist, voluntary, agorist variety podcast where we talk about and philosophize the morals and ethics of everything going on in the world today, tomorrow, and in the future. I'm your host, Nev, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host and fellow anarchist, Harley. Harley, how are you today?
I am ready to punch the idea of statism right in the schnoz.
Oh, yeah, see, you're tweaking it there. You're kind of, it's evolving, you know?
I mean, I'll say punch government in the dick off and on for sure. It's like the main one, but I gotta change it up sometimes, you know?
Nah, no worries.
You gotta be unpredictable. It's the element of surprise when you are combating government.
Oh, keep them guessing. Keep them guessing.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So today we there's a couple of things that we're going to talk about, and we'll probably be bouncing backwards and forwards between them. But a couple of things that seem to be more current eventy. That's two words I just completely made up. More current eventy, not the fruity current. But yeah, is how voting seems to be making a lot of people go a little bit cuckoo,
and seems to be.
Yep, seems
to be. Yeah.
You know me, I'm being diplomatic with my language because.
Okay, I have to just speaking of language here. I have to ask a off-topic question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the fruit current.
Yes.
Okay. Here in the US, a lot of people don't know what that is.
Okay.
I can assure you that because I actually have to teach what it is, or I had to when I was teaching at the academy, because we would have creme de cassis, which is current liqueur. And I would always have to explain to everybody what that is. So how common is that in your neck of the woods? As a fruit, like, is it just everywhere? Does everyone know what it is?
Everybody knows what a currant. Yeah, everybody knows what currants. Everybody in the UK, everybody knows what currants and raisins are. Everybody.
Well, raisins, yeah, but raisins are different, you know.
Well, raisins are slightly larger, slightly different color. Currants are much smaller and they're darker.
Yeah, I mean, but they're just like standard old grapes, though.
Mm-hmm.
Raisins, currants, yeah. That's what I try to explain to them, that the flavor of a currant. I tell them it's like if you took the flavor of raisins and turned it into wine, like, because you have like wine, but you're using regular grapes, but it's like, no, it's more raisiny than that. Like, that's how I best describe it.
Mm-hmm.
But I always have to explain what it is. So you mentioned that, and I'm like, is that more common there?
Yeah, everybody knows that. Everyone knows that it's just a dried fruit that gets used in baking.
Huh.
They get put in scones and they get put in raisin buns.
So wait. That just makes me wonder, like, what is your definition of a raisin? What are your raisins made out of?
It's dried fruit.
It's just dried fruit?
Because
here raisins are specifically dried grapes.
It'll be some kind of small seedless fruit.
So it's just like a general term for dried fruit?
It's just raisins and currants are just raisins and but they get used a lot in baking, because they get used in things like spotted dick, and they get used in things like scones, and some people will put raisins or currants, but a lot of the time there's very little difference. It's primarily the difference between raisins and currants is the the size and the color and sometimes the sweetness.
I have to explain what the fruit is, and actually for a long time it was illegal to grow in the US in certain states. I think New York, for instance, only recently uplifted that ban on growing the fruit currant, black currant itself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I was like confused. I'm like, does everyone know what that is? And then you're mentioning raisins, and I'm like, wait, what do you think a raisin is? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I learned something today, and I hope you all did too. So there we go. This episode is already worth it. Anyway, continue. Crazy people. Let's talk crazy people.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's we are talking about people behaving in irrational and unreasonable ways, and censorship specifically on the various different media platforms, whether it's social media or whether it's legacy media. There's just and it is something that does tend to happen in or around or before elections in Western. It's definitely I mean, I can't say certain that it's just something that happens in Western culture. For all I know, it may happen in other cultures as well. I just haven't experienced it, so I don't know about it firsthand. I would be getting that information second or third hand. But no, to be specifically, to be more specific, what we're experiencing, we're experiencing it firsthand in Western culture. So the likes of England and Europe and America and North America and Australia. English speaking, English speaking countries.
Freaking white people.
It does seem to be. I'm amazed. I'm amazed that people haven't cottoned onto it. It's like you kind of know it's going to happen, but people don't seem to prepare themselves, and it's like they then get shocked. I mean, it's like, oh, so all of the, perfect example. I found out last week that a couple of channels on YouTube were effectively deleted. They were banned. And the reasons that they were given for banning, they believed were wrong. So a channel, what is it? The Dollar Vigilantes channel was banned, and a Facebook personality within I suppose what could only be referred to as the liberty-minded community, a guy called Joseph Sigurdsson, his YouTube channel was banned. Both channels had very, very far-reaching viewerships, very, very large subscription base, and they would talk about current events. They would talk about news articles, things that were going on in the public domain, and they were effectively censored. They were erased from YouTube, which is going to make people think, why? And it always comes down to ruler's choice, because places like YouTube are not a voluntary society. They have rules, very subjective rules, and then those subjective rules are enforced by rulers. This is not like, this is not, people. I mean, I always refer to, I always like to refer to how different things are now from what Aristotle first said, which is the law is reason free from passion. Kind of like meaning that the law rules and laws are simply mandated rules, compulsory rules, enforced rules, should be objective. And what we see more and more these days, and especially around election time, are subjective rules. Because language, the language is constantly changing. So, that people are getting banned and people are being censored because of a subjective rule that is being enforced that says you are behaving in a bullying or harassing manner. And that seems to be the go-to subjective rule these days, which makes the rule in itself meaningless. If you do not have an objective, and I don't have anything against rules at all.
Right.
I have nothing against rules at all. I think rules are good. Rules can be reasonable. Rules can be rational. I just don't think that, if you have reasonable, rational, and logical rules, you don't need a ruler to enforce them, because people would look at that rule and go, oh, you know what? That is a perfectly rational, reasonable rule to follow. Don't murder people. That's a good rule, because I myself don't want to be murdered. I would follow that rule because I think that's a reasonable, rational rule. Don't steal from, so I don't have issues with rules.
Right.
As long as they're objective, and as long as they're reasonable and rational, and not being, enforced through, negative, violent consequence. But when you come to the likes of Facebook, and you come to the likes of Twitter, and you come to the likes of YouTube, because they are, for all intents and purposes, the big three in the social media domain, and they do tend to have, I'm not going to say they do tend to, they do have rules that are subjective, and not only are those rules subjective, but they are enforced subjectively. So that there is no, the objectivity has gone. A bit like with very much so like with a lot of legacy media. The legacy media used to be about objective journalism, and as we've seen it evolve over the many years, some people would say a decade, some people would say multiple decades, it has evolved from objective journalism to subjective journalism, in that they pick and choose what stories and how they want to report on a story, instead of, here's a story, let's verify it, and then we report on it. And these days it's, here's a story, do we like it, do we not like it? If we like it, we'll report on it subjectively. If we don't like, if we do like it, we'll try and report on it objectively with a little bit of subjectivity there. And if it's something we don't like, either we subjectively decide we're not going to report on it, or we report on it in a 100% subjective manner, an opinionated way. So the whole censorship that is going on at the moment. I put a really, really good example that I saw yesterday of people calling for it and then being censored themselves was Sacha Baron Cohen. He called for Facebook to censor a story, and then it was censored because he mentioned it. So it's like, I want this story censored because I don't like the content of it. You should be censoring it. And they were like, okay, but that means we're going to censor you because you're talking about the stuff that you want. So it so when people call for it, it always tends to come back and bite people on the ass.
It's going to backfire. You can't call for other people to be censored and not expect it to ever happen to you. It can happen. I mean, I personally haven't had like posts deleted. I don't know how I've escaped that kind of stuff, to be honest. I share stuff no differently for the most part than other people do. But I haven't really had like Facebook or Twitter, etc. posts taken down so much. I have had one of my Etsy stores, I actually kind of just shut down and restarted because 5 days after I opened it, I had multiple items taken down and my account flagged for breaking terms of service for a rule they literally had just created the night before.
Oh, wow.
So they created this rule 4 days after I opened my shop. And the rule was no items that hint towards the term boogaloo. So one of my items didn't even say it anywhere. For those of you who know, some of you have purchased this, it's the, it says hippity hoppity, get off my property. It's got like the gun scopes on it, the rabbit and the cross rifles. All it says is hippity hoppity, get off my property. But it still got flagged and removed. Mm-hmm. And because I had multiple items shut down like that, they actually threatened to shut down my account over a rule they just barely made. And their reasoning behind this was, well, Boogaloo supports acts of violence. And I'm sitting here thinking, Antifa was just freaking labeled an actual terrorist organization, and you still allow those things on there. All these punch a cop and all this kind of stuff, which, I mean, it's freedom of speech as far as I'm concerned. They're allowed to say those things as far as I'm concerned, as long as they're not actually going out hurting anybody, then whatever. But don't tell me my hippity hoppity get off my property shirt is a violation of the terms of service because, oh my God, violence. Meanwhile, you're letting all these other, literally gang related stuff. I'm not even talking Antifa. I'm like literally like gang related stuff and all kinds of other things that easily could have freaking fallen under that same category. But no, my barely open shop gets flagged and threatened to get shut down. It might literally just be because I had the whole libertarian thing going on. I don't know. I mean, the shop name at the time was Don't Thread on Me. Obviously a pun on, don't tread on me. The whole thing was, voluntarism, agorism, ANCAP, libertarian, etc. So, I mean, that literally could have just been why. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, that. Well, but the problem. You never know when it's going to hit, and you got to be careful, and it can hit you, and you wouldn't expect it.
It's. I mean, I was gonna. I would say it's about a lot of it is to do with the use of language and how language is read or misread by individuals. Because at the end of the day, what you've got is a subjective set of rules being subjectively applied by a group of faceless, nameless people. And there is no recourse for the people who are having subjective rules applied on them subjectively by nameless, faceless individuals. Now, we don't, that there are many facets of life where that just would be completely and utterly unheard of. Now, let's perfect example of a situation where that kind of thing didn't happen, but it was narratively expressed as that was what was happening, was when in Portland they were saying that nameless, faceless law enforcement officers were going around and rounding people up. And it made people angry because rules were being enforced subjectively by individuals in a subjective way, but you didn't know who those individuals were. So
wasn't it just anybody that looked like they could be Antifa, like literally people in black hoodies and crap, and they were just grabbing them?
Exactly. Now, whether there is or is not good reason to round that person up or not is irrelevant. The argument being made against it was you cannot have a nameless, faceless person subjectively applying subjective rules on people without knowing who the individual is, so that there could be a recourse. So if I was if you were the person being taken off, you want to know, I would like to know who that person is so that I can have a train of recourse against that individual person. Now, that doesn't happen on social media. Yet the same people complaining, I don't know for certain if it is the same, but people of a similar ilk complaining about that thing happening are the ones that don't complain about it happening on social media, but actually call for it. They want nameless, faceless people to be the ones responsible for applying subjective rules in a subjective way in order to achieve what they see as, a good thing. But they don't see it in other facets of life. And this is why calling for censorship always comes back and bites you on the ass. Rules need to be objective, 100% crystal clear. There cannot be ambiguity in the language. You cannot have ambiguity in the language. I'll go back to it again. Aristotle said, law, which are rules, is reason free from passion. You cannot, passion is subjective. You have to remove the passion. You have to have clear, delineated language that can be read, understood, and followed by everybody. But they keep diluting the language. Social media and legacy media keep diluting the language so much so that most of their rules are now so subjective that nobody can understand exactly what they are. So it's very, very difficult for people to follow. And the amount of people that come out on YouTube, addressing Team YouTube directly and say, look, tell me what the rules are so I can follow them. Because your rules are so subjective, I don't know if I say something that I think is within the, within my remit and within the rules, is going to get me banned. And they never make clarification. They always use subjective language to describe what their rules are or what their rule changes are going to be. And the way I see the bullying and the harassing thing is the application of that in order to get channels banned and to get channels deleted is the bullying and the harassing thing. They are applying, the individuals dropping that ban hammer are subjectively saying, okay, so in my subjective opinion, bullying is saying something nasty about somebody. In my subjective opinion, harassing is saying something nasty about somebody. So when someone says something bad about an individual human being, if the person enforcing the rule likes the person that is being, or likes the institution, or likes the group, or likes the person being criticized or having mean or nasty words said against them, they go, that I'm going to class that as bullying and I'm going to ban you. If they don't like the person that's being mean words, nasty words, horrible opinions being expressed towards them, then they're like, oh, well, that's just mean words. That's just nasty words. That's just an opinion. I'm not going to ban that person for that. And we know that this occurs because we know that this occurs, and we know that this has to occur because algorithms and AI cannot get it right. They simply, that they're not, AI is not intelligent enough at the moment to be able to determine context.
No.
And a perfect example of that would be the one single time I've only ever been censored once. And it was 3 years ago, and it was a one-line comment on a post on Facebook where I used the line. I'm paraphrasing myself, but it was along the lines of everyone's laughing hysterically, everyone's going nuts because I asked someone if I could pinch a fag. Now, in local colloquial terms in the United Kingdom, pinch means steal, borrow, can I have? And fag is a cigarette, smoke.
See, this one I knew.
And this one you knew. So the line, can I pinch a fag, in local colloquial terms in a lot of regions of the UK means, can I pinch a cigarette? Can I have, can I have a cigarette? Right. But in the US, that's like that. They were like, I've never heard that phraseology before. I've never heard that local colloquial. So when I said it, everybody's like, and then they said, say that again to this person when they come in, and we want to see what her reaction was. So she sat down. I'm like, okay, Miriam, can I pinch a fag? And she looks at me like, if you want to. I'm like, no, you've got. Obviously, then I had to sit and explain it. Now that post was removed from Facebook for breaching community guidelines. Now, I did go back and I did to and fro with them. I was like, is this an individual person, or is this being picked up by the, algorithm? Right. And it was something that was picked up by the algorithm because the algorithm had interpreted the word pinch as, to pinching skin, which is an aggressive act. And it took the word fag, meaning a derogatory term for a motorcycle person. I'm taking
homosexual.
No, I'm taking the Mickey out of South Park. South Park used the word fag in an episode. They used it to mean something completely and utterly different in a comedic way to say, hey, look, different people use that word for different reasons.
Right.
But they took it as a derogatory term. So they took those two words and they went, right, okay, aggressive act against someone, against this group, and they just simply banned it. Because my argument against them then was, well, what about the musical band Supergrass? The musical band Supergrass have a song called "We're All Right," and there is a line in the song that says, "Smoke a fag, put it out." Now, smoke could be used as a term for, snuff out, kill, murder. And then, so why does the algorithm not pick up that song on Facebook and ban that song? Because there's a line in it. And the reason for that, I was told during the argument, was the algorithm doesn't differentiate. The algorithm differentiates between music and speech because it classes music as art.
I was gonna say music is artistic expression.
Exactly. It takes music as
It's
artistic
supposed to make
expression.
you feel something, guys. If it's really, really wrong and shitty and horrible and disgusting, then it means it's working because it made you feel something. That's what I
Yeah.
always get told.
But that again, that brings me back to that brings me back to that brings my point back to language. People, if people do not want to be banned, if people do not want to be censored, they need to be like me, extremely just you can be extremely diplomatic in your language and your use of language and your conveyance of language in order to get across the exact same point without saying something that a AI or a person who is very subjectively opinionated against you from banning you. You just have to be. And people will. I can already hear the people saying, I shouldn't have to be careful with my language. I should just have freedom of speech. And my argument then again is that's all well and good, but that if somebody that shares the opposing opinion to you is in charge of whether your language is seen or not, isn't thinking like that. They are thinking completely different to you. They have formed their biases and their opinions in a different way. You need to be able to get, you need to be literally be able to guide. There's them, there's you, and there's a thin line between the two of you. You need to be able to, you need to use language and you need to come up with words that enables you to go straight down that line without interfering with both sides. And it is possible. It is doable. It's just that people don't. People tend to want to say what they want and just expect to not be banned, and that would be nice. But we don't live in a world where YouTube has objective rules anymore. We're no longer in the noughties. Go back to YouTube mid 2000s, and they had a good, solid set of objective rules that everybody could follow and everybody knew. But we don't live in that era now. We've moved on from there, where we now live in an era where people literally call for censorship 24/7. I don't like what that person says. I think they should be banned. I don't like what that group says. I think what they say should be banned. And it has disastrous consequences, doesn't it?
Not to mention people say, well, I should have free speech. I should be allowed to say what I want, etc. And bottom line is YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, etc. They're all essentially private companies. They're all, this isn't like even a law free speech thing. I mean, that's like, it's no different. You walk into, a kid's playground, anything more child friendly oriented, and you start just freaking like stripping and screaming obscenities and hitting on every other, MILF in the room. Well, it's free speech. I should be able to say what I want. Okay, but you are breaking the guidelines that they have because for multiple reasons. For some, it might just be because they want to keep a safer, cleaner environment. They're allowed to do that. Or they just don't want the risk of, what do you mean you allow this behavior and this kind of speech? Because like you said, everyone's calling for censorship. What do you mean you allow this in your establishment? You're allowing hate speech. You're allowing sexual harassment. That must mean you support it personally. And then you get the mob after you. Look, guys, they allow this, which means they support this. So yeah, there's a few different reasons. And so, say, well, it's my free speech. Okay, it's their business. It's not law. In this situation, you have the right to be able to just leave at no consequence and use something else. And especially these really big companies, they don't care if you leave. It's really just no skin off their nose if you decide to use some other format, But yeah, no, I completely agree. I definitely, with that said, I do believe that we are overly censored in a lot of ways because, yeah, everybody's just way too offended. Everybody's way too easily upset over this and that. And I mean, personally, I feel like a lot of people are just more focused on, it's not even so much like, is this worth censoring because it's legitimately bad and damaging? Is this actually harming me and damaging me? Or is it just uncomfortable and I don't want to deal with uncomfortable? You know, I mean, I was like the whole concept of trigger warnings I was discussing, you know, with you earlier because I was in a tizzy. Imagine that I was in a tizzy with you, driving me nuts with my tizzies, big shock. But you know, like I see a lot on Facebook the concept of trigger warnings or content warnings, some will say instead. And they have a place, I feel, sure. There are people out there who cannot, you know, look at certain things, you know, like, okay, for instance, definitely put a content warning in like a bloody, gory, like death scene because, you know, stuff like that for sure, you know. But then I get people calling out for trigger warnings over things like spider photos. Like, I've always had arachnophobia. I'm not gonna ask people to put a freaking trigger warning on that. I've had people ask me to put trigger warnings on my freaking photos of my rabbits because I raise meat rabbits. And they go, but what if one of those is gonna be meat and I'm a vegan and I can't handle that idea, so I need you to start putting trigger warning. It would literally just be like a photo of a bunny playing in the mud, running around, rolling, having a good time. It would be something cute and wholesome, one that's not even meant for meat, just one of my little babies that I love. Look at my cute bunny. Oh my God, put a trigger warning because what if you decide to use them for meat and I can't handle that as a vegan? I'm just that sensitive. Okay, well, fuck you. Okay. And I told her that. I'm like, no, you either hide my posts or unfriend. I am not putting trigger warnings on my freaking bunny photos for you. I'm not doing it. This is my Facebook page. You have the right to hide it or leave. You can make that decision. But I'm not going to freaking play up the sense of, oh, it just makes me uncomfortable. You're not traumatized over my bunny photo. Okay? You're not. It's a bunny. A harmless, sweet little fluffy, wuffy bunny. You are not traumatized by the idea I mean, look, I've been through trauma. I think most people at this point have been through some kind of trauma in their lives, or at least a very great deal of us. And it drives me nuts how people are taking these terms, these trends, etc., that are supposed to aid those who are legitimately suffering in a bad place, etc. They need the help, and they're twisting them for their own comfort level. You know, so the more you say, oh my God, I need a trigger warning for this and for this photo and for this word and for this and this, because it just makes me uncomfortable. I don't like it. It's just, okay, there's two different problems with this. For one, it's basically crying wolf, okay? And you are quieting those who actually need the term. The more you say, I need this, when you really don't need it, people are going to take those who do legitimately need it less seriously, because they're going to catch on to you and go, you don't need this. You don't need a trigger warning over a freaking image of a snake or something. Most people do not need that. Most people can look at a photo of a snake and be okay. You know, I have a couple of my own really whack like images that I cannot look at, or I will get like debilitating sleep paralysis for anywhere between 1 night and 2 weeks generally. And I still don't request trigger warnings because it's so absurd and out there that it's like no one's going to remember, no one's going to be able to freaking like realize that that's even a problem. So I have to handle it myself. Okay. If I can do it, most people can. All right. Now, and then again, if you just keep using that term for yourself, yeah, you're going to take away from those who need it. The other thing, what was I? Oh yeah, this also kind of falls with another thing I was telling you about for the whole comfort level thing. I was telling you about the spoon theory. I told you about that, didn't I?
No, I don't think so.
I didn't tell you about that. Oh, I thought
you might have. I don't know. Well, let everybody else know.
Okay, so this kind of falls under the same category of people who are just taking things that could aid those who actually need it, and using it for themselves and making it like a general norm. And then it's useless because people are like, for those who actually need it, because then people are like, well, you don't actually need this. Why am I catering to your needs when you don't actually need it? So the other thing was a spoon theory. So I know some people don't know this. A lot of people do. What the spoon theory is, it was created by someone with chronic illness. I think she had multiple chronic illnesses, actually, if I remember correctly. And a friend of hers asked basically, like, what it's like living with it, because there were a lot of things she couldn't accomplish, and she explained it by grabbing a handful of spoons. And she said, here's my amount of spoons I have each day. And each task uses a spoon or more. So like getting out of bed and getting showered and getting ready for the day, that could take like a spoon. I mean, I'm just kind of throwing arbitrary numbers just to get the point across, but cleaning the kitchen could take like 3 spoons, and then when you're out of spoons, you don't have it in you to do it more. Maybe you're just in too much physical pain. Maybe you literally just don't have the physical energy. And again, that's something I totally get. I'm narcoleptic. I can only go out and handle errands and lots of like thinking and planning and going out and doing things for a few hours, and I get home and I have to sleep. I can't, most of the time I just cannot physically do it. Or I'll spend a few days where I'm just working and hustling, and then I am so out of it at some point, I can't move without passing out. Like, okay, so I understand that concept, and it's a great concept to explain to people who are actually in that situation. The problem is, I know an awful lot of people out there who are using it to justify not getting out of their comfort zone. They're barely out of bed. They don't have debilitating illness. They don't really have anything major, but it's not something they want to do because maybe, I don't want to handle the no's right now. I don't want to have the confrontation because I don't like confrontation. I don't have the spoons to deal with it today. No, you can do it. This is for people with debilitating illnesses who literally physically cannot perform the tasks because they have multiple issues that they are trying to express to you, saying, no, look, I really cannot do this. This isn't because I don't want to, because it makes me uncomfortable. It's because I literally can't. And it's taken up by those who can, but they don't want to. And that's just been something that's been driving me nuts lately, because I've been seeing so much of that, and I keep seeing people trying to get me to work around, their discomfort levels and everything. And it's like, I will to an extent, but that was my also original point, though, is that it also kind of falls back on censorship in a way. When I'm trying to express and say, look, I just had this experience. This is a demographic that created this experience, and it actually falls back on the voting, because lately, for me, it's been a lot of male feminists, Biden voters, etc. Those who claim to be all for women like me. They want to see free-spirited, free-thinking, independent, strong women, unless they're not voting for Biden, or if they don't support Kamala Harris in any way, because then all of a sudden I'm using my internalized misogyny. And that's when I get the rape threats, the death threats, the slut shaming. You have 2 kids, so therefore you have a washed up pussy nobody wants, and you're just lonely and miserable, and putting up my face on blast saying, somebody is struggling to get fucked and things like that. This is a demographic of people that are supposedly supposed to be on my side, and yet they're incredibly abusive to those who are not, just because of a difference in, it's not like I'm, even voting for Trump or anything either, but even if I was, that still doesn't justify that behavior. So when I'm sitting here saying, okay, this is what just happened, that's actually what set me off, is I saw somebody on Facebook saying Democrats would never talk to women that way. And I'm like, oh boy. So I'm like, you know what? When I'm seeing all these people in absolute denial saying, my side would never talk like this, my side would never say something like that, we just want to see you succeed and thrive. It's those nasty Republicans, though, they'll do it. and I'm getting this treatment from the Democrats, and I'm trying to say, hey, guess what? I'm getting treatment from Democrats. Actually, if you want to talk about keeping your fellow Christians in check, keeping your fellow Republicans in check, et cetera, then you need to keep your fellow Democrats in check. And then I'm being told I needed a trigger warning for that. That made me uncomfortable. I'm sorry, I can't read your posts anymore. Can you please put a warning on there so I can just skip over? No. That's probably a really, really like nasty, like, I'm sure I'm going to get some backfire for this, but you know what? I am going to you guys saying, hey, I just had this experience. You're talking about keeping this group of people in check, and you are literally asking me to provide you the option of completely tuning me out and the cries of others who need help because it just makes you uncomfortable. You don't think I'm uncomfortable getting all these threats all the damn time? People who literally like blast my face, they'll even like try to dox me, try to get information on me, hoping something bad happens to me. You don't think maybe that makes me uncomfortable? But you don't actually want to help. Because if you wanted to help me and other women like me in this situation, you would be hearing me out.
Yeah, it goes to specific. I mean, obviously, it goes to this is specifically to social media, like Facebook and like Twitter, and it's like when there are sides, that there seem to be these times and these situations where the sides arguing against each other they just simply will not accept that there are exceptions to the rule and call out the exceptions to the rule. So you get a base on each side, and what tends to happen is you'll get a base on each side and they'll say, I disagree with you. So yeah, normally what happens is you get a base. You'll get a base on each side that have very, very similar opinions to each other, and this is the way that it generally goes with a left and with a right. And what those bases tend to do is they will say, I disagree with your opinion, but I respect your right to say it. And then they will argue and counter-argue and debate and discuss with each other the best ways to find a solution to problems that they share. Because those two bases tend to always agree. 9 times out of 10, they'll agree on what the problem is, but their difference of opinion is on the solution to the problem. So, problem A would be, we want great education for our kids. An argument and a problem that not a single person in the world would disagree with. We need world-class education for our children. The difference comes in how do we provide it. Now, the left base has an argument and the right base has an argument. And then on the outsides of both sides, you have the exceptions to the rule. And the exceptions to the rule is, I disagree with your opinion, and it's wrong, and you're a horrible human being because you don't share my opinion. Horrible things should be happening to you, and you should be silenced. That's an exception to the rule. And you get it on both sides. Now, sometimes the exception to the rule is larger on one side than the other. I would argue that during the current climate, in the current climate with our current culture, the group size of the exception to the rule is larger on the left than it is on the right. And if you go back, if you infinitely regress and go back over time, it switches sides. Sometimes the exceptions to the rule are on the right, sometimes the exceptions to the rule are on the left. But during the current period, it seems to be the left. And what you're getting grief from, and you're not even on either team, is you then receive vitriol and you receive horrible posts and horrible response from the exception to the rule. But what happens is what the base would normally do on both sides is they would call out the exception to the rule. They are, don't listen to them, ignore them. They are an exception to the rule. They do not share the views of the base. The base respects your opinion. It may not agree with it, but it respects your right to voice it without threats of censorship, without threats of force, without threats of violence. And the problem is, in today's current climate and today's culture, is there are elements of both bases not prepared to call out the exceptions to the rules on their side of the argument. And what you're getting more from the left than from the right is just ban them, just censor them. If we ban them and we censor them, then the exceptions to the rule won't be able to argue with them. If you, we don't agree with them that violence should be met upon them, but we don't agree with their opinion. So if you just censored their opinion, if you just silenced them, then, we wouldn't have to worry about the exceptions to the rule on our side, because if they're censored, then there's nothing for them to get triggered about, That
actually does remind me, I totally forgot about this, but I mean, this is actually a perfect case of, oh my God, my feelings, I'm going to censor you. And I believe I discussed this in a earlier episode, is when in that Facebook group, someone put up this image. It's like a sculpture image, and it has like a morbidly obese individual on the bottom half of this person. And I'm not talking like, a little chunky. I'm talking like they probably need a scooter or something to get around, like really, really, really like dangerously unhealthy. And inside is the top half. It's like a cut, muscle toned individual, and they're like chiseling away. And not me, but someone else put that photo up in this art group, and basically was like, oh, this is amazing, look at this, it's inspirational. It's saying like, I can't achieve this, I just have to chisel away bit by bit, but I can do this. And tons of people were in there calling it fat phobic. How dare they post something, and devalue those who are plus size, etc. And there were some people putting up their before and after photos, like trying to like, look, I don't see this as fat phobic. If they're like, there's a difference between a little chunky and unhealthy, and that's an unhealthy starting point. So by all means, if an individual person wants to accomplish that goal, then let them. And that's basically what I said too, because I mean, I used to be like 80 pounds heavier. I was not as big. I mean, my biggest was like 2x after having 2 very close together pregnancies. The first one had really bad hormonal issues that actually caused me to gain 65 pounds in 2 months while unable to even eat more than like 400 calories. Oh, it was bad. It was totally bad. So, I mean, like, I get it, Plus, I've got knee damage and spinal damage, all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, like, I get it. And it took me 6 years to get from point A to point B. Okay. So like, I get the struggle. And I basically went in there saying like, look, this was my starting point. And I was encouraged to get healthier because I hated how I couldn't fit in a lot of chairs properly. I didn't like not being able to find clothing that I felt good in, because I mean, honestly, plus size clothing is usually pretty ugly. I'm just going to say, and I hated that, everything looked just so, for some reason, they think we all just love, I say as I'm wearing florals, but every freaking plus size shirt is like floral. And I like them in moderation. I don't want to just wear florals all the damn time. Okay. So I got sick of that. I got sick of not being able to pick up my kids without getting winded, or even being able to do one squat without the weight hurting my knee and wanting to fall over and die. There are lots of reasons. And I said all that. I'm like, I just wanted to be able to move again. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be able to keep up with my kids running around. I've got 2 little ones and I couldn't keep up. So I wanted to change that. And I put up photos before and after. One, like a side view of myself. I think that was even after I lost like 20 pounds, the first photo. And then the second one of me at the gym, full on flexing, obvious tone and everything. And it got taken down. And so I went in there and I'm like, can someone please explain to me why my photo got taken down? I wasn't attacking plus size people. I was simply saying, if somebody wants to make the healthier decision, then, by all means, why not encourage them to make that personal decision as somebody who has been in that situation? And then I got banned. Because, oh my God, I'm hurting the feelings of those who are pro body positivity, and I'm attacking plus size people, apparently,
Mm-hmm.
by losing weight, by my own weight progress. No.
1 minute. Yep.
So, it just drives me nuts when people are just, they want you to be quiet about your hardships, your personal hardships, your personal experiences, so you can help those who are going through similar struggles because it makes them uncomfortable. And I understand that there are exceptions to this case. There are people who flat out cannot be subject to watching certain things, for instance, a lot of people cannot, victims of sexual abuse, etc., cannot watch shows, crime shows, for instance, because it's going to, oftentimes they recreate the scene, and so they need to stay away because it makes them really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And in that kind of case, it's like, okay, I get it. They're actively reenacting the scene. It is meant to make you upset. It is meant to make you uncomfortable. So yeah, that's perfectly fair to put a warning in front of that. I completely get it. I mean, I personally have my own issues, like when the riots first started, all the, cop protests and everything went down. At first it was getting you riled up for a while watching all this happen, because it was like, oh my gosh, how, this is just infuriating on all accounts. But watching things, like what really got me actually was the video of the little girl who was outside a protest. Her family was not part of the protest. I think this was before it was even a riot or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was just kind of meeting up there. They were just trying to get home at like a bus stop or something. They're just standing there, and a cop comes by and maces like everybody, including this little like 8-year-old girl in the face. And I mean, at that point, my friend, like when I saw it, he was almost like, he was like, do I need to take your phone from you right now? Because I actually broke down at that, because it brought up a lot of previous issues I had and emotions I had growing up with somebody
Mm-hmm.
who wanted to be a cop. And that was the thing that just hit way too close. It was like, I mean, it's not like I've ever been maced, but I mean, I've had my own issues with somebody who wanted to be one. And then, I mean, I went into great detail in the first episode about how they were siding with him in the courts because he wanted to be a cop and everything. And it pushed me over the edge. And so, I mean, I completely get it. I do. But I'm not going to be quiet about how I felt like crap being overweight and I wanted to fix that. I'm not going to be quiet over when somebody is actively threatening me, degrading me, insulting me, etc., because I simply don't agree with them. I mean, and I understand asking for a warning is not the same thing as censorship, but I think personally, this is where my internal battles kind of clash, is the fact that I don't like being ignored when I'm saying, hey, this bad thing is happening. And that's kind of why I kept watching like the police riots and everything, because I'm sitting here going, these are people who are actively getting hurt and are trying to get the word out, and they need help, and somebody needs to listen to them. It doesn't matter how uncomfortable it makes me. I know I have enough of a following that other people are going to spread this information as well if I post it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was more important. It was aiding other victims in some way. And I promise I'm not just trying to be a cold, heartless bitch going, no, I'm not going to give you trigger warning. To me, it's more like, no, we need to, that's why we have empathy. That's why we have these emotions, is because that's who's going to spread it more. That's who is going to take these issues more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just, I mean, that's just the way I personally see it. I will be uncomfortable. I will be even in tears, like, and I'm not much of a crier. Let me just say, it's not a norm for me, but I'll get to that point if it means hopefully someone else is heard and pulled into a better situation, or things are changed, etc. So that's where I kind of get frustrated with it personally. It's like, yes, I know it's not censorship, but you're still asking for the opportunity to ignore me and ignore other victims because you don't want to be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Now, those again of you who actually have legitimate traumatic flashbacks, etc., I understand. If you don't, and you just don't want to, I don't like seeing that. No, I have less sympathy for that, because I'm sorry, that's how we get more victims, is by not listening to them.
Yeah. No. I wouldn't disagree with you.
I guess that kind of goes back to what you're saying too, is we have this, it's the same end goal. Obviously, we want there to be less victims, but my responses and my methods are completely different from how a lot of other people handle it.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And
we can all acknowledge a problem that requires a solution, but then we disagree on the solution to the problem. See, a lot of the times the problem is not the issue. The issue is agreeing on a solution to the problem.
Right.
I mean, that's not to say that there are people that see problems where there are no problems, or create problems and create problems and then have a go at, oh, this is a problem, and then somebody goes, well, no, that's not really a problem, that's not really an issue that requires a solution, because that then falls back to objectivity and subjectivity. There are objective problems, and then there are subjective problems. So an objective an objective problem would be, we can agree education isn't perfect. What solution can we come up with to make it not perfect? Because, searching for perfection is, near on impossible for something as large scale as trying to find good education. So we can agree that education isn't perfect for children. How do we get it closer to it? So that is an objective problem.
Right. And see, like for me, tuning out the victims, to me, that's never going to be a solution ever. And I understand there's people who cannot listen to it. To those of you who do follow my social media, and it's, oh my gosh, you keep posting these things, it's making me uncomfortable. Look, I'm not going to be offended if you just hide my stuff or unfollow or whatever. And maybe, for those like, oh, I don't want to do that to you. You're my friend though. I don't want to just hide your stuff because you post good stuff too. Okay, well, then we can discuss the good stuff one-on-one. That's fine. Strike up a conversation with me and hold that one-on-one, just the good stuff. I'm not going to be offended if you just, if you're one of those people who legitimately are traumatized and cannot look at this stuff. Because I post a lot of heavy stuff because that's what I do. I try to bring awareness to heavy stuff and what's really going on. And if it's just too much for you and it's literally causing you these detrimental traumatic flashbacks, etc., by all means, then hide my stuff. We can still be friends, chat one-on-one. It's like, everybody, but otherwise I'm not going to be quiet for those who need to hear it. For people who are saying like, well, this would never happen on my side, my side of the spectrum, my party would never do this. No, they do. And you need to hear it. And I'm not going to be quiet for the people who need to hear it. There are solutions, giving the
that's just it. There are multiple solutions.
There are multiple solutions. And to me, giving the option for the people who simply don't want to, not because they can't hear it, but they just don't want to because they just rather tune it out and no, my side is perfect. No, I'm not going to be quiet for those people. They need to hear it. They need to stop perpetuating this idea that their side is so perfect and righteous and everything while they are hurting other people.
Yeah. And the problem and the issue, and that comes back to the issue of those people that don't want to hear or see your solution, saying, I don't like that solution. I disagree with that solution. I want that solution to not be seen by everybody else. I, as an individual person, have a problem with that solution. And I think that solution should not be seen by everybody. That's a problem. That you do not want to go down that route. Because other people, not the people calling for the censorship, but the people that aren't calling for censorship, might look at that solution and go, hey, you know what? I kind of agree with that, or I 100% agree with that. Or it could be, you know what, I agree with a little bit of that. How about we tweak your solution this way to make it an even better? So, see, without everybody seeing all of the solutions to all of the problems, we can't come to, it's not difficult for people that want to, actively see solutions to problems solved. And you cannot do that, and it's very, very hard to do that if people who don't like certain solutions to certain problems simply go, I don't like that, and I think for the good of everybody, it should be censored. The bad ideas and the bad solutions need to be seen. Even if it's a 100% bad idea and someone looks at that and goes, that's completely and utterly bonkers, that is a stupid solution to a problem, I may or may not agree with, and I know to ignore that person because, if you can't come up with something reasonable, rational, and logical to a simple problem, then you're probably not going to be able to come up with something else. And you can either block or ignore that person. Okay? But to say that person should be 100% blanket censored or stopped is wrong, because a broken clock is right 2 times a day. A broken clock is still right twice a day, and yeah. you don't know if that person that comes up with. I mean, this is right for both the left and for the the left and the right. Every now and then, somebody on the left, even the exceptions to the rule, someone who's an exception to the rule on the left might come up with that broken clock solution, and you're like, but and the problem is, it's like you might actually, so the exceptions to the rule calling for censorship of everything they disagree with, right, could end up getting themselves censored. And it's like, do you really want to censor everybody because you disagree with an idea, or you disagree with a solution, or you disagree with an opinion? Because one of these days you might actually come up with something that people agree with and want to listen to and want to share and go, hey, I agree with that. You're having your broken clock moment, but you've asked for censorship. The censorship has bounced back and hit you, and now I can't see. I can ignore you when you're wrong all of the other times, but I still want to be able to see you and hear your opinion if you have your broken clock moment.
Yeah, I see that a lot on Facebook with like the hardcore conspiracy theory types. Like, I'm talking the ones that are like full on flat earth. Everybody in Hollywood is actually trans, and they're all drinking adrenochrome, all that kind of stuff, right? But those are also the people who are some of the first to put up when things actually turn out to be true, like the Epstein stuff and everything. Like, they post all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, there's no way. That's insane. That doesn't even make any sense. But then they're also the ones the first to share when something actually happens and it turns out to be true. And it's like, this is why I keep you around.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Something's going to be right, and it's gonna be like, there it is.
A broken clock, exactly. I'm trying to think of a conspiracy theory that has been proven to be an actual conspiracy. The Gulf of Tonkin incident. Where a ship was, where a ship was destroyed in the Gulf of Tonkin, and the conspiracy, that what was put out was, it was the enemy that did it, and we need to do X because Y happened. And conspiracy theorists were like, well, no, it was really done. It wasn't done by X. It was done by Z in order to achieve Y. And many, many years later down the road, it's like, oh my God. The people that, the people that the conspiracy theory that Y did X, Y did X, but it was actually Z that did it, has been proven because it was admitted, and people are like, okay, fine, you've had your broken clock moment. That doesn't mean all of a sudden I'm going to believe that the Earth is flat, right? Or that the moon landings, the moon landings were fake. It's like,
some of those are ones that just don't care to learn the truth.
I know.
Like, if the moon landing is fake.
Yeah, and here's the thing.
It doesn't really affect me. I'm kind of like, whatever. I know the government lies. That's not. I'm like, okay, so they lied about that too. Whatever.
I've had those. I have had those arguments with the conspiracy theorists. I mean, what the one that I the one that I've always argued regarding the one that I've argued the most, I think, is the moon landing one. Because people are like, the moon landings were fake. The moon landings were fake. Look at this fake photograph. Look at this fake photograph. Look at this fake. Look at the manipulation in this photograph. And my argument has always been, well, I'm not disagreeing with you. And they're like, so you think that the moon landings were fake? I'm like, no, the photograph's fake. You're not arguing that. But that argument, and by saying that photograph's fake and that photograph's been manipulated and that photograph's fake, isn't that you're not making the argument that the moon landing is fake. You're making that the photograph is fake, and I'm agreeing with you. You are right. I'm looking at that photograph.
One part is true doesn't mean the rest is.
And I'm looking at that photograph, and that photograph clearly, you've made a very good argument that that photograph is fake. But that's not. You're trying to argue to me that the moon landing was fake, and all you're doing is convincing me that that photograph. So and they're like, but that means that no, and it's like arguing back to them. No, you've just this second argued that that photograph is fake. It's been manipulated, and I'm agreeing with you that there is a good argument that that photograph has been faked, but that does not add to your larger argument that a space shuttle took off from the Earth, flew hundreds of 175,000 miles, landed on the moon, and people walked around on the moon. You're not arguing against that not happening. You're arguing that, they were like, oh crap. And they're like, oh, so why would, and then they come back with, well, why would they fake the photograph? And it's like, I don't know, maybe when they returned to Earth from, and they passed through the Van Allen belt, the radiation protection for the photo material was damaged, and they're like, crap, all the photographs have been spoiled.
They had their anti-gravity, and anti-gravity coffee flew into the camera and damaged it or something. I don't know.
I mean,
there are to announce nationally, all over the world. So they just faked a photo.
It's so much easier. It's so much more. I mean, Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually the right one, and the simplest explanation for a bunch of fake moon landing photographs is that the techs and the engineers screwed up on the radiation protection for the cameras or for the film. The film got blanked, and they're like, "Oh no, we've got no proof. What the hell are we gonna do? Just fake some photos, dude. Seriously, just fake some photos.
They left it on the moon.
We've got the spaceships. We've got the telemetry. We've got the video footage. We've got the live feed. All right." People aren't going to think that we haven't gone to the moon if we fake a handful of photographs, and it's like, yeah. No, yeah.
I'm going to pretend clearly they just left the camera on the moon. That is my conspiracy theory to the conspiracy theory, is that they just flat out forgot the camera on the moon. They were halfway home and went, shit.
Well, no, I think one of the one that does the one that I always fall back to, and a lot of conspiracy theorists conveniently ignore, is the mirror. The mirror that was placed on the moon. Because when the moon is in the correct position and you are in the correct position on planet Earth, you can literally fire a beam of light or a laser at that mirror and it will come back. And that's how we know the precise distance of the moon to the Earth. It's one of the ways that astrophysicists monitor the distance of the moon to the Earth. They measure how long it takes for light to go from Earth to that mirror and back again, and that is how they are able to work out and determine the precise distance of the moon, to within a few meters of the distance of the Earth to the moon. And I've never heard an argument against, the people doing the tests are using faulty equipment. And it's like, well, no, anybody can go and buy this equipment and anybody can do this experiment. That's the beauty of it. Simply putting a mirror on the moon. So we went off on a little tangent there. There is another tangent that we're going to go off on now, there, isn't it? This is your tangent. Okay, go ahead with your tangent.
I mentioned earlier, I said don't get cocky, but we're going to get all cocky in here now. So yeah, I promise a little show and tell. Those of you listening can't see, I'm flailing around a resin dick that I made myself. And yeah, it's got baculum. And I always have to explain what the hell a baculum is, because a lot of people, since humans do not have them, do not realize that many, I think most actually mammals actually have a bone in their penis, and it is called a baculum. And so for those of you actually watching the YouTube, you better be watching the YouTube. I'm going to be freaking posting this shit saying you better be watching the YouTube or you're going to miss out on the goods on show and tell, and that's a stupid idea. So this right here is, this is actually the very first one. A friend got this for me when I was working my butt off. It is an extinct seal baculum, and it is actually 40,000 years old, from the frozen tundra of Alaska.
Oh, the frozen tundra.
I know, right? It's an extinct seal. Look at that. It's got some heft to it.
So mammals of the past clearly didn't have problems with the cold.
Right? I know, right? No shrinkage there. You know, it's actually funny how all these different sizes they come in, because like, okay, I'm going to do a little comparison here. So this one has a wolf one, actually. Okay, that's a wolf one. Wolves are flipping huge. Okay, wolves are pretty damn big. And the one, and I'm going to say this is probably like, I'm going to say maybe 3.5 to 4 inches long. I'm going to say, all right, just kind of guesstimating. And then I've got in the resin one I have here that I made is a raccoon one. And those are easily a good, like up to 5 to 6 inches long. Well, raccoons are significantly smaller than a wolf. So there doesn't really seem to be much rhyme or reason, as far as I know, to how big they are. Apparently bear baculums are like freaking just as big as a raccoon one somehow. I don't know how, but yeah, go figure, right? I so badly want a walrus one that I can wrap in barbed wire and mount it on my wall. And if anyone breaks in, they are getting freaking whacked in the head with a barbed wire walrus stick. Like,
so Harley, for everybody watching and listening, why the obsession with penises?
Honestly, it's just sense of humor. I don't know. Like, I know people ask me, like, why? My whole family even asked me, like, why are you like this? I don't know. It might just be genetic. Like, oh, I should have brought that in. This is what I say to them. I'm like, the one thing, well, there's two things actually that I inherited from my great grandfather when he passed away. All right. One is actually up on my wall, and it's some kind of mystery Bigfoot photo, because he was actually really into the Bigfoot lore. Claims to be involved with the Patterson-Gimlin film, but I have absolutely no proof except for a few things in my life that made me go, wait, what? Like, so I don't know. I'm not going to claim that it's true, but I don't know. The other thing was actually a sock monkey that his, I think, aunt made him, and it is indeed anatomically correct. Yeah. It's just humor that runs in the family is my best guess. I don't know. I'm sorry, guys. I can't tell you why I'm like this. I just am. You take it or leave it. All right. So this right here is an ancient Mayan ritual penis piercer. And it says,
just saying, putting those two words together just makes me wince. It really does make me wince, putting those two words next to each other.
I am teaching ancient history and science, okay? Like, this is all.
Give me a trigger warning.
I gave you one. I gave you many. I literally held this up to you and said, look what I'm freaking putting on here.
Yeah.
You got me.
Doesn't make me wince any less.
Anyway, it says that this is anywhere between 540 to 2,000 years old. And it says men practice penile bloodletting, where they used a stingray spine, or the stinger thingy. This one I think is actually made out of the stingray. There were a couple others they had on display, and one was like it was shorter, more triangular and blunt. This one, for those who cannot see, it is long and more like a spear. So I'm gonna assume this one was made out of the stingray. And yeah, they would pierce the genitals, let blood drip onto a piece of parchment, which was then burned as an offering. This one has been found in the central lowlands of Guatemala's central lowland near Tikal. So I got that. I still need to hang it on my wall, though. I need to get like one of those little like frame backing things so I can mount it. Actually, I've got directly in front of me. That's going to be my wall of penis right there. Everything. I need to get shelves and shit. And then I got, because I know how much you love Star Wars. So obviously I have to show off
Yeah.
this anatomically correct,
An anatomically correct
misprint
C3PO.
trading card. Yes, it is 1977 misprint official trading card of C3PO, and it looks like he got a raging boner right in the photo. And I guess what happened was like it was explained like years later, and I guess like for that scene he was like they legit like dipped him in vegetable oil, and the oil like caused some like parts of the costume to like goof up and like bulge in some areas and like break and dissolve in other areas, and so some of the parts kind of just went screwy.
Yeah, sorry, what year did you say?
77.
77, yeah.
Yep.
No, there was an oil bath scene in the first episode.
Right,
well, obviously
right,
not,
yeah. So I guess, they actually legit used
wasn't
oil.
the first episode. It was episode 4, but it was the first movie. Yeah.
Right, no, I get you. But yeah, I guess they like legitimately used vegetable oil for that, and they like full on lowered him down in there for that scene.
Yeah.
And it screwed up his costume, and they didn't notice until it was like, way too late. So yeah, I've got that as well, amongst other just random little goofy stuff. One time my friend actually like, I belong to this group where we like, it's like a gift exchange kind of thing where it's like every month you send each other stuff specifically like from Wish, because everyone's seen the Wish ads and the obscure random like what the hell am I looking at kind of products they tend to advertise. And so my friend runs the group, and she decided to make one specific exchange that was all penis related. You had to send each other penis related stuff. And one of my best friends drew my name by chance for that exchange. And she sent me a box of dicks, just tons of stuff, including that trading card. That's how I got the trading card. So she sent me that stuff she made, stuff she painted, stuff that she just got like everywhere. So I opened up and it's just a box of dicks. So yeah, that's actually how I got that trading card. I think she got it off of eBay or something. But yeah, so I've got that amongst, gosh, I need to count how many species of vacuum do I even have at this point? I've got fox, wolf, raccoon, that's seal, mink, weasel, beaver. I think I have otter. I feel like there's one more I'm missing though. I got somewhere around 8 or 9 different species.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who ask, because I raise rabbits and everyone always asks, rabbits do not have vacuums.
So, thus ends today's lesson. A wonderful tangent to end the show on, I think.
I was learning the masses.
Definitely.
Everyone
Science.
got science. People got ancient history out of that. People got pop culture. You got 3 different things right there.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely.
You are welcome, everybody.
So, this is where we go. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Check out Harley's merch in the link below. Comment about it on Twitter. Ask us questions. We ain't shy. And we will see all of you lovely, lovely people next week for another podcast. Harley, would you like to say something before we end?
Thanks for looking at my penises.
Oh, God. Okay, fine. That's an interesting way to end it.
It's getting a little tubing in here.
Okay. Thanks a lot, everybody. Toodles. We'll see you next week.
Bye.